We've all seen the images, right? Wealthy nations sending aid to poor ones. It's always presented as this story of help and hope. But what if that help is actually part of the problem? What if the very act of giving is creating a trap? Well, the numbers tell a fascinating and frankly a really troubling story. So let's dig in. It all starts with this number. Over the last 50 years, more than 1.2 times trillion dollars in development aid has flowed into Africa. Just take a second to let that sink in. $1 trillion. It's a mind-boggling amount of money, an unprecedented global effort to lift an entire continent out of poverty. But the big question is, what did all that money actually do? Now, you'd think that kind of investment would absolutely crush poverty, wouldn't you? But, and this is wild, the data shows the complete opposite. Poverty rates in many of the countries that got the most aid are now 3 times higher than they were back in the 1960s, right when these massive programs were getting started. So you have more money, and somehow more poverty. This right here is the trillion-dollar paradox, and it's the mystery we're going to try and solve in this explainer. How could so much generosity, so much good intention, lead to such a devastating result? To really get our heads around this puzzle, we have to look back at a little bit of history. After World War II, the Marshall Plan rebuilt Europe in just 5 years. It worked. So why did a similar idea, stretched out over 50 years in Africa, fail so spectacularly? A short, super successful plan versus a long, drawn-out failure. To understand why these two stories went in such different directions, we have to pop the hood and see how this aid machine is actually put together. Okay, so our first clue is what some sources call institutional rot. It's a political problem, and it starts by basically short-circuiting the fundamental relationship between a government and its people. Here's how it works. So in any healthy country, there's this simple, unspoken deal. It's called the social contract. We, the citizens, pay our taxes, and in return, the government gives us stuff like roads, schools, and security. And if the government messes up, we hold it accountable at the ballot box. It's the absolute bedrock of a functioning democracy. But here's the thing. Massive foreign aid completely breaks this link. All of a sudden, the government has this huge source of cash that doesn't come from its own citizens. So who does it need to keep happy? It's not the taxpayers anymore. The government's accountability shifts away from its own people and towards those foreign donors. The government's focus turns outward, trying to satisfy the requirements of aid organizations, instead of looking inward and serving its own population. This creates a huge disconnect that can weaken a country's institutions for generations. But believe it or not, that's only half the trap. So that was the political problem, but it's tied to a really serious and often totally overlooked economic problem. And that's the second piece of our investigation, what we're calling the currency conundrum. Okay, just picture this. Billions of dollars, euros, and pounds suddenly flood into a nation's economy. And we're not talking about a trickle here. This is like a fire hose of foreign currency. It's just simple supply and demand. When you have this massive supply of foreign cash pouring in, the value of the local currency gets pushed way up in comparison. It becomes stronger. And, a strong currency sounds like a good thing, right? Well, not always. And here's the catch. If you're a local farmer trying to sell your coffee, or you're a textile maker trying to sell shirts to other countries, that stronger currency just made your products way more expensive for everybody else on the global market. Suddenly, your international customers can't afford to buy from you anymore. So this huge rush of aid money, with all the best intentions, inadvertently makes it almost impossible for local businesses to compete internationally. It basically kneecaps the export sector, which is one of the most powerful engines a country has for creating its own wealth and jobs. So let's put the two pieces of our investigation together. We've got a political problem and we've got an economic problem, and both are caused by the exact same thing, this massive influx of foreign money. This is what's known as the aid trap. You can think of it like a trap with two jaws snapping shut. The political jaw cuts the essential link between a government and its people, causing those institutions to weaken. And at the exact same time, the economic jaw clamps down on local industry, making it that much harder for the country to build a real, sustainable economy on its own terms. And that's, right there, is the heart of the paradox. An intervention designed to help development can unintentionally create a cycle of dependency and economic stagnation. It's a system that, for all its good intentions, can actually trap nations in poverty instead of lifting them out. So this leaves us with a really difficult but absolutely essential question. It forces us to look beyond simple solutions and to think a lot more critically about how all this works. If this kind of aid can actually be a trap, then what does real effective help actually look like?